Welcome to Prophecy 3. Today we're discussing the Mayan calendar, culture, and the 2012 phenomenon and how this is affecting us to this day. So please grab your pens and notebooks and get ready to jump into this beautiful discussion with Raven Alexandria. So Raven, we're so excited for this time. Hola. All right, Raven, are you there? Hi.
Hi.
So
Happy spring. Namaste. Hare Krishna. Jai Ma.
Feliz Primavera. Yes. Happy Ostara and all the good, beautiful things changing in this world. So, today, we're going to be talking about the Mayan culture, calendar, and the 2012 phenomenon and how it's all affecting us. But first, I wanted to ask you to do a mantra and everything. And also, what does prophecy mean? Because we've been doing this, for the last, this is our third one. And so what does it mean? And yes, so take it away.
Great. I would love to lead us in a Ganesh mantra. I'm just going to give a pranams to my guru right quick. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva, Guru Ishvara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Shri Guru Vedama, Om Guru Shaya Bhakti. Om Gam Ganapataye Om Namaha Om Gam Ganapataye Om Namaha Om Gam Ganapataye Om Namaha.
Yay! So, what does prophecy mean? Why are we doing this?
So yes, if you saw the video that we put out promoting this, we talked about prophecy being a discipline of oracles. And so what does this mean for our current age? I think it means a lot because you can see so many people are practicing different forms of divination and it's very popular. And so definitely if we talk about what an oracle is, it's referring to someone who is speaking divine will, which is connected to the concept of higher intelligence or multiple different various types of intelligences. And so you can have an oracle who is orating the will of different intelligences from different dimensions. And then you also have the seer who is interpreting different signs and symbols. So these two concepts, along with the idea of being a witch, an astrologer, they're all very popular these days. And so we started prophecy as a personal project just to collaborate and get to understand different traditions of people using these different forms of science and spirituality. And for me personally, it's helped me uncover a lot of new information. And so that is what prophecy has meant to me. And so we would love to see you post what prophecy means to you in the comment section of this video during the live or after when we post it.
Yes, please, because I feel like you said, it's about like the oracle divination, but that's within us because oracle, to speak orally, right? Everyone does this on a day-to-day basis. And so what is your prophecy? What are you speaking into life? Because the words have, so much power. And to kind of take that back from authority. And I think we're definitely going to be jumping into that more because that is something we both feel passionate about. So I'm going to just go into the Mayan and, why we're going to be focusing on them today. If you guys have been joining along with these prophecies, I mentioned briefly about the Mayan calendar on the last one. So today I just want to go into more of who the Mayan were and what was their purpose. So the Mayan, it was actually, they didn't call themselves the Mayan. They were basically a group of people stranding from like Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Central America, coming up to the Yucatan of southeastern Mexico. And that is known as the Mayan people, right? But within those Mayan people, they had different dialects. They had different, basically different dialects. That was and different names for the tribes. So Mayan, this is actually coming from the word Mayub, Mayub, and that means the elected. So what were the Mayan elected to do? What does that even mean? So according to, Mayan lineage and descendants, they were chosen to give the science behind awakening consciousness and to live knowledge by observing the internal and the external realities that are forming with our observation, and also to harmonize the heart with the earth. And I love, these words in English, heart and earth, because they're actually the same letters, both of them. And they also have the word art in them. So we can just see how that's all connected: heart, earth, and art. So they really, of course, they had a Varnashram system just like us. I mean, just like most of the big civilization, Varnashram is like the different duties. For example, you have the kings, the rulers, and things like this. Then you have like the priest and the shamans and the spiritualists. And then you have the warriors, the soldiers, and then you have the workers, the farmers, the people that are producing and doing the labor. So this is exactly how the Mayan were as well. They taught their children at very young ages to observe externally what they saw in the sky. So this was a part of their culture, was to be connected just with the earth in itself and also with the sky and what they saw. Contrary to what many people believed when the first news of a Mayan civilization came out to the world, they were not savages. They, they're pictured as these people who did a lot of human sacrifices, which I will talk about in a little bit, but they were not savages. Actually, the Mayan had the most sophisticated pre-Columbian arts. So art, architecture, astronomy, mathematics, and the calendar. They had the most intricate and sophisticated knowledge in that sense. So they were actually one of the biggest. This is why we're talking about them. And I feel this is a great place to start, because there's so many things that we're going to talk about in our future prophecies, but at the same time, starting with the Mayan, I think it's really conducive to understanding and painting the picture. So before 2000 BC, basically before the Common Era, this was considered the archaic period of the Mayan. They basically were separated villages. They did their work. They did all those things. And around 2000 BC, they started to create complex societies. They would have a ruler. They would have, the way that they were doing their agriculture. They're doing it in a bigger way. The diet was corn, beans, squash, chilies, cacao. They would have, of course, their elaborate rituals, honoring their ancestors, honoring the earth. And basically I'll mention this, but basically this started around in Guatemala. This is where you can find some of the most intricate societies. So this period, the pre-classic period, lasted from 2000 BC to 250 AD. So almost a full 2,000 years. And then we get into the around the 350 AD. This is actually when they have perfected their hieroglyphic writing and script. This is around that time, 350 AD. They perfected it. So during this whole pre-classic, they already have their hieroglyphs and they already are creating their systems. But at this point, when it becomes the classic period, this is where they're at their prime. So they have all of their writings and things like this. And this lasts till 950 AD. Now, like I was saying, you had these complex societies. These complex societies become city-states. So now you're working at a bigger level. There are some of these places, the faults of the Mayan and how you go from pre-classic to classic is the collapsing of the empire. So obviously, when you start to get more and more people coming together, the rulership and all the government has to be, they have to create a system that functions. And unfortunately, they never actually united all of the different places, and they stayed in these small city-state kind of But during the classic period, what was really interesting is that they started to raise sculpture monuments, which we would call stelas. And this was where they would write down the long count date. Remember, long count date is what we consider the cycle for the fifth world, or this new era that we're coming into after 2012. During the classic period, they had a complex trade network, and they had a lot of talk with Teotihuacan. We're going to talk, I'm sure we're going to bring him up later, because this is one of the biggest, also the biggest cities in Mesoamerica was Teotihuacan. This is like the Mexica, the Aztec, and they started to go to the Mayans. They started to go there. They started to trade with them because they had different things. The Mayans had black obsidian, jade, ceramics, and things like that. And the Aztec, they had green obsidian. And so they were doing a lot of trades with them. So this was a rise of big cities like Tekal, which Tekal is in the Yucatan, and they had 500,000 people in there at the rise. And so what happens is, again, you get all these people to start coming together, and this has never been happened before for them. So they started to have wars breaking out with neighboring villages, started to have wars and prolonged war, and as well as famines and droughts, because at this time, again, they're deforesting their forests. So, you know, we see the Yucatan, we see Guatemala, we see how green and plush they are, but during those times when they were having those big civilizations, they were cutting down the trees, and this was leading to drought and famines. And this is one of the reasons why there are those collapses that happen. So we get to the post-classic during after 950 AD, and this is going to last till 1692. And this post-classic is the rise of the Chichen Itza. So each time the civilization collapsed, the people migrated north. So this time they're in basically the Yucatan Peninsula, and this is the rise of Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza is really big, one of the most common sacred spaces we know about the Mayan, because of the shadow that is cast of Quetzalcoatl on the solstice, on the equinoxes, the way the pyramid is placed. The sun during high noon casts a shadow, and this is said to be a beautiful awakening each time it happens, and we'll talk about that more. So again, there's this prolonged warfare, there's disease, there's migrations, there are natural disasters. People are refugees when these political collapses happen, again, because they never ever united. And you also start having this Aztec empire coming in as well. So we get to about the 1500s, and we have the first contact with the Spaniards. And this was in 1511. And what happened was a boat hit the coast, and there were only 12 survivors. The Mayans who found those 12 survivors, they imprisoned them and they killed them, but 2 managed to escape. And those 2 people actually wandered around and wrote down everything they found for the Spaniards. About 10 years later, in 1521, that is when Hernando Cortez, he landed and he did the conquest. Now, when the Spaniards came and did their conquest, this was mainly to get value, to get the jade, to get gold, to get you know, things from the land and take that from them and create debts. You know, that was what the Spaniards were looking to do with the Mayan people. Not until 1549 do you have Diego de Landa coming. And this is the first mission, not the first missionary, but the first missionary to come and be very disgusted by the Mayans, because the Spaniards allowed the Mayans to keep on their traditional economy. And by the introduction of steel, the Mayans were able to create faster, and that was why the Spaniards allowed them to do that. But when Diego de Landa came, he saw that the Mayans were still worshiping their deities, and therefore he said that he basically created the first Inquisition. Diego de Landa, 1549. Let's not forget this, because, you know, I think this is really important to understand. And what he did was the first thing he did was destroy the books. He destroyed basically all the books. He created a fire in the middle of the city, and he put all the books from all the Mayans in the fire. And Diego de Landa, he said that those, because the hieroglyphs, of course, this was strange looking to a Spaniard. He said this was like the devil's lies. And so, you know, they were coming off in this. And so, again, this is where they started to savage. They started to go really crazy on the Mayans. And not until 1692, so almost 200 years later, did the last Mayan city fall. And that was because the Mayans knew the art of war. They knew how they were furious, or, you know, warriors, and they did fight for themselves. And that's why they didn't go down without a fight. And it took 200 years for the full Spanish conquest to happen. So present day, like I said, most of the Mayans would be found in southeastern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador. What is left of the Mayans are their pyramids, their stelas, which have all of the calendar written down on them and the history, as well as the codices. And the codices are, there's 3 codices: Madrid, Dresden, and Paris. They're named after the cities that they are in, the museums that they're in. And there also is the Chilam Balam, which is one of the only pre-contact books that survived the Inquisition. Just mentioning briefly, in 2018, we're still discovering so much about the Mayan. There is this thing called a light dar, that basically a plane can go over land and x-ray the earth. And in 2018, they found a very complex society in the Yucatan, and very much older than what they believed the Mayans were in the Yucatan. And so now they are questioning, actually, where is the birthplace of the Mayans? It is no longer just Guatemala, but they're also finding that now. So yes, that is basically an overview of the Mayans. Hopefully we were able to understand and take that in, the history of them.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you taught me more history than some of my teachers who were given the standard American curriculum. And I think that says a lot about the time that we're in now and what we hope to accomplish in the now and in the future. Mm-hmm. And just getting people to understand that we've been indoctrinated through the education system, and we're mainly taught in America. And if there's anyone who sees this from outside of America, maybe this can give you a perspective of what's going on. But it's like we're taught from birth, my millennial generation and before that, to the X generation, the boomers and the silent generation, we were specifically programmed to ignore other people who were outside of our predominant narrative of history. And so we're all typically taught that the Mayan period of antiquity that you mentioned, before we implemented before the Nicene Council and these other pontifical bodies in early Christianity initiated the year 0 for Christ's birth, there was a flourishing community in this hemisphere. And it's really important that we reconnect to that, because there are answers all around us, and we're constantly being programmed to erase that and erase the existence of Mayan culture, Mayan science, and Mayan art that is permeating all around us at all times. And the reason why we connect this to Vedic science is because there's similarities. And there's similarities in the patterns of what colonialism has attempted to squelch or burn out, to where people don't realize where some of this information is coming from. And so we're constantly in a feedback loop of certain authorities reappropriating truth and ignoring where it comes from. And so they're not getting the full picture. And so prophecy has come together to be able to help us interrogate why this is, and so that we can have a praxis, so that our beliefs aren't occulted by this. So I thought it was really interesting how you mentioned the Mayan were scientific and they were artistic, and these are all facts that need to be spread more, and that this is still alive today. And I think it's interesting that there's science now when it comes to understanding global warming that the Mayans obviously knew. They knew about climate and different energies dealing with patterns and cycles over long periods of time. And recently, so if we go back to where you're talking about the post-classic period and these earlier periods of the Mayan, those periods overlapped with our history, where we're taught the Greeks and the Romans created and invented and established and founded and invented and were gods and all this. This, what you're saying, was happening during a medieval warming period, ironically. And so the medieval warming period was, you know, is still being investigated since we have more science now, that is very similar to what the Mayans understood, what they were tracking. And so that is happening up until about, you know, 950 to 1250. And then you have that is overlapping with the Middle Ages. And so we're taught about the Middle Ages, we're taught about the Roman Empire. And so the Mayan were also thriving and having civilizations and going through and solving problems and experiencing life. This is important to understand, just this simple fact. Mm-hmm. And so as the crisis of the late Middle Ages began, and this is connected to global warming periods that were happening around then in the North, it gave forth the Age of Discovery and the Renaissance. So the Renaissance is really important to understand because in reference to 2012, it is also a part of a string of renaissances or ascensions or waking up moments where you have sages and seers and diviners, oracles, elders, yogis, rishis, magicians, scientists, healers, doctors, everyone you can imagine. They're all come together at these little points in time and they're like, hey, we got to wake up together for some reason. And consistently that's being marked as a myth and pseudoscience. So we have to understand the indoctrination aspect. So during a Renaissance, we are taught in school that a Renaissance is a time to question humanism, realism, and naturalism. It's to define what is real. It's to question our relationship with the natural order. And it's to define who are we, who is a self, what is a human. All of these things were going on all over the world. It just didn't happen in Europe. And it was, and there's more evidence that has been occulted or left out or that's being rediscovered, channeled, that is proving this more and more in our indoctrination that we have to own up to. So prophecy has this program that we started is we're tying ourselves together with our visions and our perspectives and our senses, all of our senses that we have in our different bodies that we put together so that we can envision the container that we are being asked to hold, to have Darian, to have focus, so that we can pass this on. Because if you haven't heard, there was a little ice age not too long ago, and they're talking about this is relating to the Great Famine of the 14th century, Black Death. This is all sounding very familiar. And it's happening over and over again in patterns. These periods of disease and then followed by spurts of growth and exponential potential, culminating in spirals.
Yes.
Patterns that Mayans understood. The Mayans understand. Sorry, I try not to use the past tense when I'm talking about the general approach to it, unless I'm talking about a specific time in history.
Yeah. Sorry.
So basically, we see that being the Renaissance, that leads up to the Age of Discovery. And this is the period where you mentioned the Spanish conquest and how, you know, the Spaniards were coming as conquistadors and interacting and trading and colonizing this. And I say these different words because the same thing is going on today. And we have to use the multiple terms to see how it's being carried on so that we don't think that it's over or that we don't dismiss it. And so these things are happening simultaneously in the past and now. And so now you have the Age of Discovery, and once again, things that are not belonging to a class of people are being taken for as credit, that they created it and invented it, discovered it. And this is being perpetuated in our indoctrination. And so you have post-classic after the Mayan, their cities fell. And so this, you mentioned Chichen Itza. We have to think that during this time, what else is coming up? Capitalism, the precursors to capitalism, mercantilism. Remember that
Industrial complex.
industrial complex. Remember that we mentioned in several other prophecy episodes the great schisms and the tumultuous relationship between timekeeping practices, the ritual, the daily lives of different classes of people, debts, property, prophecy connected to the term property. Mm-hmm. And so we have, and we're going to mention this later, but we have the demonization. And even the term demon is coming from daemon, which is, you know, a recant of Greek thinking, and, you know, related to Socrates, and challenging the idea that you have an intelligence that can balance skepticism and eclecticism to understand the divine and the mundane. So this is what this period was about, as they're coming into contact with different ways of thinking, as they're being given the papal bull to colonize and enslave and appropriate and steal. So they're coming up with this, we must demonize this genius things, these things that we're coming across, and we don't want this to be known. And so if we look at the modern effects of this, we have this in our culture, in our Western culture, where modern science, modern religion, politics, anything that has some authority, it's like a double-edged sword, because you have people in authority who have good intentions, and they try to show this, but then ultimately the system itself is, because it's coming from this source and we haven't fully corrected, it's anti-spreading true knowledge. It's anti-technology in that it doesn't use it properly. Yes. Because the Mayans had technology, the African people had technology, all different sources of knowledge and technology has existed. And so with decrees like the Summis Desiderantes Affectibus, which created the Inquisitional against not witches, but people who were practicing herbalism, practicing shamanism, practicing science, practicing alchemy, these things, you know, political dissidents. And so in the idea of parallel worlds, the idea of reincarnation, all of this is under attack, and it still is, by the state and the church. And so I thought it was really interesting that you brought up the idea of climate and knowledge of science and the energies, because we are in a time again. And it's time to ask these questions again about how to understand who we are as humans, what is real, what is natural, what is artificial, and to move past this occultation in this apocalypse, this resurgence. And I think looking at timekeeping practices is really important. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the Mayan calendar?
Yes, I do. Actually, it was what you were saying, you know, I hope that everyone understands. It's the indoctrination that we've been going through has been stemming from this time, you know, of the age of discovery, right? And now it's like, you know, we're entering into this new renaissance. But again, I really, you know, I posted this on my personal Instagram today. You know, we say this words new, and I just want to make sure that, you know, everyone knows here that we're not new agers, and we're going to definitely get into that, because there's nothing new about the Mayans, right? This is ancient knowledge, and this is why it's so important to connect with this knowledge, because it's something from the earth. It's from the earth itself. This is the knowledge of the earth. Just as we understand the Vedic terms and philosophies, and how the Vedas, they have every type of science you want to know are in the Vedas, because this is the knowledge of the earth, and as well as the solar system, because yeah. So what I want to talk about, I briefly mentioned last time in the other prophecy 2, and I want to just mention really quick about the timekeeping and why they had calendars and what was it all about. So there's actually 3 to 20 calendars that the Mayan had, and so most of them have been lost, and we are basically left with 2 calendars. So, you know, the Mayan, why they had these calendars, I'm basically going to do like four different reasons why they had calendars. One was timekeeping in itself. As we know, the Mayans had the idea of the concept of zero. They had the idea of cyclical time. They used the vigesimal system, which is going by 20s. And if you remember last time, I talked about how did they get the number 20? 10 fingers, 10 toes. And this is why I want to say it's from the earth, and the knowledge is something that we can know just by observation and by logic. So they had the idea of, you know, they they could actually go back into time to 16.4 million years ago. They have so many cycles that they can go that far in time, as well as there's 5 cycles of time outside of that that they have no name for. But they can date back to 16.4 years. They were seeing also how the days worked and like what to do during those days. So just briefly, this big one, I'm going to talk about this big circle later in the next point. But these 2 small ones here, if you can see, there are 13. So they're using the magic number 13, like I was talking about last time. This is a number, a very big master number for a lot of different cultures. And they had 13 tones and 20 days. 20 days made up 1 month. So these months and days, they had their own vibration, and they were able to tell the people, okay, today is the day of the jaguar. This is the day of the underworld. This is the day of these kinds of things. The day would span, that Nawal, which is a day, had the tone though. So it would be like 1 jaguar, 2 jaguar, 3 jaguar, all the way to 13 jaguar. And then it will go to the next one, or like death. And they would know death is a transformative time, right? So they would know exactly, this is why they were keeping time. This is called the Tolkien, which is the ritual calendar that I just explained. And they were also looking at how they were timing the evolution of consciousness. They were timing when the activations were going to happen. They were also timing or measuring solar flares and planet transits. They were specifically looking at the planet Venus. When the planet Venus was bright, that signified good things were going to happen. If it was dull or not seen, they wouldn't consider that the most auspicious times to maybe start a new project or do certain things for agriculture. So they're definitely looking at that, at those planet transits and things like this. You mentioned about global warming, global heating, and this is the idea of also like the seasons and things like this. So understanding when to populate, when to harvest, and doing these kinds of things. The agriculture, which is based on the Hab, which is this big circle here, made up of 19 months, which are 20 days each, and that equals 360. And then they have this 5 days that I explained last time. That is the, let me find the word, I misplaced it, Uya. And those 5 days are counted from the 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they were considered inauspicious to do anything. This is usually when they did their rituals, and they would do a lot of ceremonies during these 5 days. So once the 5 days are over, they're like, woo, okay, we can go back to regular life and do our normal things. So this is, again, another reason why they had calendars was to look at the effects of the planets on our neural pathways of human consciousness. So this is really important to understand because this really goes with the philosophy of the Mayan. They understand that the calendar, like I said the other time, is inside of you. It's all about self-introspection. You are the calendar because you are a part of the earth. And when you are aligned with the earth, then you are aligned with time. And then therefore you can have more deeper realizations, again, shamanic trance states to understand more of your purpose. And that is a reason why they have the day signs as well. So let's say if you're born like myself to Kame, which is to death, I have a purpose. This gives me my purpose. If I meditate on that thing, then I would understand my purpose. So this is a really big reason why they had the calendars as well. Another reason, and this kind of goes on with the idea of ascension and the 2012 prophecy, is the activation of the pineal gland. As we all know, the pineal gland, if you don't know, pineal gland is right in the center of the brain, and it's kind of right in the location of the third eye. And basically the Mayan believed that through different astronomical occurrences, there would be an activation of the pineal gland, and therefore there was certain evolutions of consciousness at certain times based on what was happening in the sky, eclipses, conjunctions, and these things, as well as the architecture itself and the pyramids. These were acted as portals. So not only are you going to have, the idea that you're activating your pineal gland, but you're going to create a structure that is aligned with the solar system. And on specific days like the solstice or the equinox, you would be at the pyramid, right? And then bam, the sun hits, and this is activating, and the radiation from the sun and the moon, radiation is actually activating more of the pineal gland. And this is helping to usher in higher levels of consciousness. That's why, before 2012, maybe we didn't see the surgence like we are seeing now post 2012, of how just like this idea of awakening, and how every kid in the United States knows what yoga is, and all these things. And we're seeing that we are rapidly awakening based off of time and internet and all of those things. So that's what
That's great. I think that everything that you just touched on, once again, just reiterates and reconfirms that the Mayan, and through our research, we've seen several other indigenous cultures have been in touch with intelligent ways of life that we are charged to do today by industries, and that we aren't given the time to do because of wage enslavement and what is currently being threatened because of global warming. So these different factors are why prophecy is important, and why getting back to the root, which is what I found through my research of the 2012 phenomenon, has been a part of the prophecy of 2012 being this pinnacle moment. And if you think about 2012 degrees, 212, right there is the boiling point of Fahrenheit. And so we are at a boiling point. And so basically, we want to think about, how do we prosper, and how do we thrive, and how do we preserve this knowledge. And in order to do that, we have to help each other, and we have to, in order to get there, we have to start seeing how our actions are connected to the environment. And so I think it's very uncanny and not a coincidence, because usually there are none. Whenever you learn astrology, you learn that there are no coincidences, and that is purpose, that is meaning. And whenever you are given guides and elders to pass this knowledge on to you, and they've been trained, and you have art therapy, and you aren't pressured from work, the coincidences aren't psychosis. They aren't negative. It is a part of our deep inner humanness, where we're connected to a string of knowledge that's all around us, and that's carried through our DNA, and it's written down in books, and it's preserved on the internet. So this is why we're tapping into it on different levels. And so one of the things from 2012 that I found interesting through my research was I came across a lot of talk about the noosphere. And the noosphere is like this concept of there being so much psychic matter that is present due to an accumulation of human thought and ideas and actions in the past, ever since antiquity, that these things are floating around. And we're not going to go fully into that today, but of course there are parallel concepts in other traditions, in other practices as well. But just for today's sake, since we're talking about the 2012 phenomenon, this is an idea that's catching on, and the term is noosphere, that is popular in this context. And so, really spread by Jose Aquarius and other people connected to the foundation of Earth Day and the New Age community. And so one of the things that we are trying to do with prophecy is to get people to understand that which is advertised as new is easily commodified and appropriated in ways where its power is not fully in the possession of the people who will do what's best with it. And so really, as I've looked through more of the New Age and what it means to prophecy, this program Prophecy, I've seen that people are really excited about the age of Aquarius, and I see why. It's because we've been primed for it. We're being, set up through the automation factors. And that's why we cannot just be registic about it We cannot just focus on the rajas of the excitement of getting towards the age of Aquarius, but we must see how some things have been off kilter, and we must readjust our vision, right? So that we become visionaries and not, you know, destructive forces. And so I wanted to just point out that in order to do that, we have to think about the biosphere. And these, you know, the term biosphere, ethnosphere, technosphere, cybersphere, noosphere, they all go together in this paradigm that I'm talking about, where you have the biosphere, and that you can understand as the biological processes of nature. And we can see that that's under attack. And we, in the Vedas, explain, Krishna specifically explains in the Bhagavad Gita, that those who are pooling all of the resources, who have the most authority over the larger classes of people, and you have the larger classes of people pointing out the corruption, those people are the most responsible for this karmically. And so when you are given the jnana to know this, then you can sort of, as long as you start to dovetail your awareness towards a political system that is going to uplift everyone, it's not that you just go and do whatever you want and not be ahimsa, but if you're practicing ahimsa philosophy, then the 1%, they are owing us through, and when I say 1%, I mean those who are pooling all the wealth, the misers, the barons, this type of thing. And so the more that we see this within us as yogis and sages and healers and things like that, we are becoming more powerful, and we're actually attracting more of the power that we seek with our will, because our will has been indoctrinated out of us. And so we have to practice these practices, which are constantly under attack, because the will is under attack. Okay. So that's the fire. And so the fire has been transforming the earth, the fire of technology. And so that in that technology, fire has been taken from the Brahmins or the Brahminical cultures and the people through their art and their sweat throughout the different cultures through colonialization. And so this fire is creating sorrow as it's being permeating in the wrong ways through mechanistic ways of thinking. So the ethnosphere, we already have power in our culture and our knowledge, and knowing that it's connected. So we must protect it, and we must use it every day. And we must say that it's alive, and that we have to live it. And we have to have culture, we have to have art, and we can't just destroy. We have to have all balance of sattva, rajas, and tamas in order to thrive. And that can happen because we understand the art of war and these things. So then you have the technosphere. Once again, this technology is being exploited. And so we're losing emotional intelligence, and we're losing the connection, again, to the feminine aspect in all of us that is connected to a non-binary source. And so this is why we're calling out toxic masculinity more and more over the years, and understanding how the earth, who identifies as feminine, Mother Earth, in several traditions, are her pronouns. And she is saying, please stop. And these people are helping me, people who are speaking out against this. We can see as this knowledge is not being used properly, the intelligence of the technosphere, the cybersphere is becoming polluted.
Is that you?
And the ego, once again, the false ego, it's not secure. People are insecure as they're online and socializing. And we are implementing positive change, but it needs to be more. And we need to use the cybersphere more in connection and helping each other through mutual aid. And so then we have noosphere, which is the one thing that is saying to be this concept of, well, you have this energy, and it comes up a lot of the darkness and but not being like dark, like bad, but knowledge and knowing, right? And then seeing everything. And I think, to me, like when I think about it, is like the fourth dimension, and seeing the space and how you can see with the Akashic sound vibrations of knowledge that you're getting, and everything is vibrating, all the molecules, and so it's all sound creating a hologram. So this is why we need to do astrology and practice shamanism and protect psychedelic plants as well.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
Once again, artificial versus natural, in the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, new versus old, this is all simultaneously occurring. And there's a cycle that the Mayan and the Vedas are trying to get us to see. There's a cycle of time going, and
Yes.
the age of Aquarius is not yet. So yeah, I think that, did you want to go into a little bit more about time?
Yes, of course. So we are just continuing this conversation about 2012 and what is the real meaning behind 2012? Why are we still talking about this, right? What is the, because and this is going to come into what our precursor in the end, and going to our divination time is, you know, understanding that 2012 was just the beginning, just like we're saying the ending and the beginning is happening, and we're beginning and ushering in something new, but there was an ending of a world happening. So really quick, I was just mentioning how, you know, this hub, this 365 year, when you have 400 years, this makes a Baktun. A Baktun, and this is 144,000 days, which is 400 years. And if you have that times, that's one Baktun. And if you times that by 13, you have something special called the Shalahu Baktun. And this is basically the 26,000 year cycle. And we know this from the last prophecies that, you know, 26,000 years, this is the precession of the equinoxes. So what the Mayan actually saw as the end of their calendar, or as what we've been saying is the end of the world, or this apocalypse kind of idea, was just the end of a cycle. So, you know, going back 20,800 years, right? You have the age of fire, with the fire element, with the feminine energy. Then 5,200 years later, you have the earth with the masculine energy. This is like the cycle. This is what's dominating the cycle. And then 5,200 years after that, the next cycle, you have the air, the feminine. After that, the male, the water. And so when 2012, you know, again, I mentioned this last time, the Mayans themselves did not believe the calendar ended on the December 21st, 2012. That was an eclipse. That wasn't that was a solstice, you know, and their calendar actually ends in August. So this is where they say their calendar ends in 2013, actually. But that solstice was very important. Obviously, coming into 2013, where bam, we entered into the 5th era of this 26,000 years, and they understand that this is not just masculine or feminine. This is both masculine and feminine. So talking about non-binary, or talking about just both of those aspects of the person. And the element is the ether. And so I really wanted just to tie this in with the idea of another prophecy, the first prophecy we did, when I spoke about the Hopi prophecy and the Tibetan prophecy, and the fact that they believe in the 5th world. So one of the prophecies, I'm just going to read really quick, just so we can remember, of the Tibetan prophecy. It says, when the iron eagle flies and horses run on wheels, the Tibetan people will be scattered over the earth, and the Dharma will go to the land of the red man. So for the Mayan, this new cycle, this new 5,200 years is the 5th world, and it is all about the resurgence of the indigenous. And based on that prophecy, which the Hopi have one of like almost similar to that Tibetan prophecy, it is saying that there's a union with East and West, right? There is a union happening. And if you guys just to remind people of my little beautiful sketch of the Prophecy Rock in Arribe, Arizona, which states, you know, that this is great creator, and you have these four worlds here. And that this world here is leading to not real stability. But after the 2 world wars that are pictured here, you can have this new world, which is right here, which becomes harmony with the earth. And that is the biggest thing that I would want anyone to take away from this prophecy, is that the idea of ascension or of activation that is happening because we're entering into this new consciousness, this ether, right? That we're going to talk about the psychicness. We can understand that this 5D ascension, or this Kundalini awakening, or this knowledge unveiling that we've been talking about as prophecy, is that as well, is about being in harmony with the earth. Harmony with the earth. When you understand that you are the earth, you are part of the earth, you have an earth body, and you align with the rhythms of the earth naturally, you are going to be in your purpose. You're going to be in your authentic self. And so this is what the 5th world, this 5th era, 5D, you know, this 5th element is alluding to, is the idea that we are coming into a new era of consciousness, but it is actually just going back to the ancient ways of civilization, meaning connected in harmony with the earth and understanding that time is within you. It is not, you know, everything, but you are like this multi-dimensional being that you can you can go within liminal space where it's like all time exists, and externally where time is eternal. So this is something really big. It's just the idea, this 2012 is the resurgence of the indigenous people. This is the resurgence of the Maya. This is the resurgence of the Native Americans. Their prophecies that they have been saying, that they have been alluding to this new era of consciousness. What we've been seeing is from the age of Pisces that we're coming into, you know, in a couple of 100 years, the age of Aquarius. So yes, so time, you know, this is very important to understand that time is within us and that we are part of the earth, and we need to be in harmony with ourselves, which is the earth, and stop exploiting ourselves essentially.
Exactly. And I think someone who isn't focused and who doesn't have a strong grasp of their will and their emotions and their thoughts and their material domain, they're easily broken and easily exploited. And this is no one's fault. It's just a product of being under pressure. And that's what the DNA spiral represents. We're constantly under pressure here, and there's a lot of friction in this. And so there are people who take on the role of inflicting that suffering in different ways. And so, and it always comes out where people are like, well, what's fair and what's karma? And so and it says in the Vedas that when we're in knowledge, then we can fully overcome, and we become invincible, and we can overcome the forces that cause suffering. And so I think that this is really what time is trying to teach us. Time is teaching us over and over again that we're being twisted and that we're being thrown off focus. And so that's why you have this apocalyptic approach through the colonial worldview, and it becomes their fault. It becomes the fault of that worldview. And so if we constantly use that worldview, then that becomes our vice. It becomes our fault. So that's why we have to out-indoctrinate ourselves. And we have to constantly do practices every single day in some way. And that's why there's different levels. You can do it psychologically. You could do it with your actions. You could do karma yoga, jnana yoga, raja yoga. You could do bhakti yoga. You could go donate your time. You could go protect water. You can go protect the earth. You can go literally give your time to all of your indigenous practices. And this is all practicing a form of connection. And once you get the knowledge of it, you see that this conception of time that is based in the mechanistic way is what's keeping us imprisoned. And when I was in Oberlin College, it was when I learned from my African cosmology class, one of my first classes in African cosmology, that time is cyclical. And you keep bringing that up. And that's one of the first steps. That's one of the first steps, because once you learn that time is cyclical, no linear way of thinking can imprison you. And this is what the Maya are trying to teach us. And this is what the Vedas are teaching us. And so think about it. In our society and capitalism, we are conditioned to think about owning time. We're conditioned to become the lords of nature, to own it and possess it. And because we don't got no time, I ain't got no time, I got to get. And you zero in on what you want.
You become a slave to time as well.
You become enslaved to it, right? And so this is all important, because this is going against the natural rhythm of the planets and the cycles, that it's like a song. And so would you see like an orchestra, like a conductor being like with a whip? No, we don't want the whip. We want we want to all sing, and we want to all dance and protect the earth and get those drum beats that tango if we need to. But this is all a dance, and we have to dance confidently with all of our parts, all of our sides. And that gets lost when we are wearing this linear mechanistic worldview. And so each of us must practice every day, and that's going to empower us. So then we get to that Vedic worldview, which is very similar to the Mayan, of understanding harmony and understanding, you know, the idea of binaural codes, even like, you know, the system of 20 versus the decimal linear 1. Like, wow, that's genius. And I mean, this is all connected to the cyclical cycles of ages and things that match modern science. This is amazing. This should be on every television, and people should be living in this paradigm. And so we have to understand material nature. We have to understand Prakriti so that we do not become slaves of the people who want to kill it, own it, because they're enslaved to their senses. And so this is what we need to understand so that we understand the harmony that our living indigenous cultures are constantly spreading to us. And so I thought that I learned so much about this so far in this prophecy, speaking with you and being able to process it more every day. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about the day of.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. I think,
Well.
I don't know. I know we are almost at an hour right now, but maybe you can briefly explain just what was that day, and then let's talk about some of present day stuff that's happening right now and do a little divination. And we can get to that question. Someone said something, and we can talk about that when we're
Yeah, that's cool. I see that. I mean, we literally we're being called to the Ethiopian calendar like over and over
Yes,
again.
but the Ethiopian, that is what we were talking about. If someone's reading the comments, someone says, according to Ethiopian calendar, we are in 2012. That's why it's so lit right now. Well, it would have been 2020. That was 2012. But at the same time, we kind of already figured out that the Ethiopians are actually following the Julian calendar. And it's not 8 years off. It's 8 days off. So, you know, we already kind of talked about that before and how. So
but we definitely got to do a prophecy on the Ethiopian calendar.
So go ahead, a little bit about that day, and then we can do a little divination.
So cool. Yeah, on that day, well, you know how there's like, you know, there's like a lot of hype about whether it was like the end of the world, but really through prophecy. And by the way, this is going to be our last prophecy for a while. We're going to do like take a month off to generate some new downloads and format it for everybody in the best way. So please, you know, really soak this in. And so really that day, there's a whole controversy over whether, you know, it was connected to anything, whether it was a myth. And, you know, and that really bugs me because we digest things a lot through the media, and the media's headlines are very quick to just cast off anything that is true in a lot of ways sometimes. And we sort of develop that as the truth. I think the less time people have to go into this knowledge and the less it's spread. So funny thing is, if you look back on that day, one of the main things about 2012 to the 21st was that it was, people say that it was like the Mayans or some new age theories were trying to say it was the black hole, and it was like aligning with Sagittarius or black hole, and this is opening up galactic energies. And you know, it all sounds woohoo woohoo whenever the mainstream media talks about it, right? But this is why we're doing prophecy, because we need an orthopraxy and we need orthodoxy, and we don't need to have like verses or should I think or should I feel. It's really like all into one, and art and science go together. And so the future and the past are Rahu and Ketu. And so if we, and I wanted you to talk a little bit more about 2020 with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction, so we can connect it.
Yeah, so 2020 Saturn, you know, on that solstice, December 21st, 2020, this is why I kind of started thinking that maybe this was the actual real year 2012, because the Gregorian calendar, they're trying to match it up with the Mayan calendar, because Mayan calendar doesn't have like that. It's a long count. It's like 13.3.4 point, you know, that is how they tell the time. So that conjunction to me, and you know, I really want to get into that divination of understanding where we're at right now, because Saturn and Jupiter, when they conjunct, the whole world knew about it. The whole world, even everyone knew that there was a big astronomical occurrence happening in the sky. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, the last time it happened was in the 60s. We all know how the 60s went through it. Like, Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn, the last time that happened was the 60s. And so, you know, that was a time where it was a lot of, you know, freeing from the shackles of, you know, society. And you have the hippies and you have all these, you know, civil rights movements and things like that. And this is something that we're seeing right now, because we're seeing that as we continue living on this earth, we can't keep repeating, like history can't continue to repeat itself, because then we're just going to be in a circle of, you know, devastation. And so to me personally, the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in December 21st, I feel that that was a real big light on an activation for the general public, especially those who saw it, those who even mentioned it, anyone who thought of it. I feel that this idea in itself, just being more open to understanding that there's things happening in the sky, they're affecting us. Maybe we don't have all the science that proves how they're affecting our brain and our DNA and things like this, but it is happening. There is an activation. There is this, you know, this idea of awakening occurring through these different astronomical occurrences. So did you want to say anything, or do you want to just go into some reading?
Yeah, I think we should go into some reading. But once again, we mentioned a lot in this video, but please go back. If you want any of my sources about where I got some of these terms from that I used in my paradigms today, please reach out to me. And I would love to give it to you, because we're really trying to generate a discourse and key terms and things like that to spread this as not a monolithic way of thinking or a new religion or a new age, apart from the idea that there is some misinformation out there and demonization of this knowledge going on. So we really need to all ascend to that call, those people who are thought seekers, you know, truth seekers, and honoring and using direct action as well to protect Indigenous communities.
Yes, beautiful. So, you know, just looking into what is coming in for the collective, we know that we are in this new cycle. We're in this fifth world, fifth era, you know, fifth, like, etheric, conscious place. So what is, you know, the overall, you know, ideas that we can take forward in this new cycle? And
well, today the sun is in, where'd my sun thing go? The sun is in Pisces. Yes. And so we definitely have like that Piscean energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And but we just had the spring equinox and everything, so that's perfect. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I pulled the star card. And so I literally have the star card in my outline right here, and I didn't get to talk about it. And so the star card, I'm working on my own little tarot prophecy that I figured out the connection with the star card and another card in the tarot, and I'll probably post about it on Sublimatorium. Make sure you follow it. And it's getting into the connection of the idea of the moon and how it acts within the age of Aquarius. And the moon is the mind. And so really right now with Mercury's energy, Mercury is in Shatabisha and going to be moving into Purvadapada. Like, really go deep into these waters of thinking and the astral world and understanding technology. Because what we're experiencing right now is going to be the blueprint of the age of Aquarius. Because why? We're writing about it. We're thinking about it. We are the people at the post-Piscean period. You know, we're at the end of the Piscean period. So really we're ushering in. We are these folks, right? It's like we're getting it together. And it hasn't fully started yet. But really use this star card energy, I think, to usher in.
Yes. Yes. My that's my card. My number is 17. So star card is definitely one of mine. I pulled the throat chakra, which I think is interesting. This blue color coming up with the star card too. Beautiful, and the Ace of Swords. So, you know, to me, when I'm seeing the throat chakra, even the Ace of Swords, it's all about clarity. It's all about, you know, communicating. Like I was saying in the beginning, you know, our words are so powerful. You know, we create spells. So that's why we'd say, you know, spelling. You know, we create spells with our words. So what are we prophesizing? What is it that we want to see? Using our words very wisely, using it with a very focused mindset with the Ace of Swords that is going to allow us to, again, birth in what we're wanting to see. Meaning, we're not speaking of the old paradigm. We're not speaking of the old world, the industrial complex, capitalism, the patriarchy. We're speaking, right, with clarity and coming back to the knowledge of, you know, ancestral knowledge, and as well as lifting up, you know, our vehicles. You had mentioned vehicles earlier, and we have the Merkaba coming out. And so to me, you know, the Merkaba is a vehicle to take us to higher levels of consciousness. You know, this was, you know, in the idea of the Kabbalah, and I know you are very familiar with that. So if you want to say anything about these two
Definitely.
cards. Yeah.
Definitely. I think I see the Merkaba in this card being, you know, in the idea of us just ascending through our connection with the order of different beings. And this is what, you know, connects to my theory of the moon card as well, in that the mind is like a dog and you have to train it. And so we are the drivers of our evolution, first of all. And evolution happens eternally in a spiral. And there is a lot of information that's out there that doesn't match the indoctrinated version of what we're being spoon-fed and what enslaves us anymore. And that is like the most radical thing that could ever happen. So, Asanga Shastrena Vedana Chitva, you must detach yourself with the weapon of knowledge, and you must have gyan. And the throat chakra, in order for that to be, you know, clear, we have to have the focus and we have to be the containers, you know? It's like we have to contain this, and we can't whenever there's like the invisible hand of the economy and economies that is pulling at our silver cords. So please, 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 please value your sleep, value your rest, value your thoughts, value your emotions, value others. Find fault in that we don't find love enough in one another. And that is extremely important, because that creativity is what the younger generations are being predicted to need the most.
Yes.
And they need our defense, but the best warriors are the most creative and the most thoughtful and the most intelligent. And intelligent being, we use our strategies and we unite with the knowledge that's been given to us, and we win. So
I love that you mentioned the silver cord, and you know, talking about capitalism pulling. I just read in this book, this Mayan book that I have, about not the silver, but the clear glass cord that connects us with the earth. And so it's a very beautiful image that you painted, that the capitalism is like pulling on our silver cord. It's making us stress. It's taking us into a lower vibration. Whereas the earth, it can actually, you know, if we're working with the earth energy, we can bring it in.
Yeah, I think it's the part of the double-edged sword aspect of it. Whenever we don't do the practices that are nourishing us and have a balance, then it says in the Bhagavad Gita that we ourselves are born in Kali Yuga with Asuric and Devic natures. And this causes confusion. But also what's in the Bhagavad Gita is what I said about how, you know, we're really all on the right track. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born during the Renaissance, right after they started demonizing witches with the Inquisition. And I think that is on purpose. And that's because all of the people who connect themselves with the knowledge that's been broken and attempted to be lost, we're all coming together to hear this truth so that we can have power, so that we become more clear in ourselves, so that we don't misappropriate knowledge and have it be stolen from our life breath, basically, and as the earth is under attack.
Yes.
So I think that's why the 5th is coming up.
Yes, I love that. You know, I have this Earth Warriors deck that I wanted to pull from, if people know about it, Lana Fairchild. And I love that what I got, and I just got a couple of downloads. So the butterfly, Lolo, it says stand in the light. And, you know, we are in a metamorphosis. We ourselves are we are always in the process of changing. Change is the constant thing that we can understand. And that is why we have to evolve. We cannot stay the same. If you do the same things over and over, you're going to get the same results. That's why it's time to evolve and to stand in the light. But, you know, the Mayan, they really had this concept of the metamorphosis and ideas of, you know, being that you change during these astronomical occurrences. So, you know, where is Venus at right now?
Venus is in the second pada of Uttara Bhadrapada.
In Aquarius?
Pisces.
And Pisces. Okay, so yeah, you know, and I think right now, you know, the star of the Chaaska, the star of Venus is coming out. And I was mentioning how Venus was a really big planet for the Mayan. And so maybe, you know, everyone, Fridays are really good to do Venus Venusian things. This is the art. You know, this is what's going to drive us into this new age of consciousness, making it more of a to live in it. Because again, like for me, I live in the fifth world. I live in harmony, you know, every day. Again, with my practice, I try to live in harmony with the earth, and I try to do things that honor and do not exploit others. And so I think that by being that true artist and being in this Venus energy of being like, again, honoring the divine feminine, standing in our light, allowing for metamorphosis to happen, allowing for the evolution of our consciousness to expand, to become more aware of who we are and what is our divine purpose here. And that's how we can step in our authenticity. And I think this is what, you know, this change is really showing us, is how to be authentic to ourselves and no longer need to be enslaved by this capitalistic, patriarchal society who tells us we need to be a certain way. And if we're not that way, we're not accepted in that society. But we're creating a new society, and this society is of unity. This is the society of the circle, of not just the circle of being emptiness, but the circle of being everything.
Yeah, I got the star card again in the Maya deck, and once again, like the circle of the sun, the star card is coming up again. And
the star of Venus, the star of Venus. So I think, you know, star of Venus, Venus and the stars.
Yeah, this is good. We have to really use our intelligence, all of our intelligence, not just the patriarchal version, the commodified version, but real intelligence. In the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life describes these various intelligences, and there's several more other than that as well. So, and when we have intelligence, then I think that gives us more hope, because Jupiter is the planet of hope. And, you know, with these transits of Saturn and Jupiter right now, we have a lot on our shoulders to, you know, to bring witness. And I've learned by practicing Vaishnavism in that way is to be balanced and to be like Vishnu. And so it's what really can get you through times like this.
Yes, beautiful. I just want to say one more thing, and then maybe we can wrap up. From my little pre-Hispanic Baraja deck playing cards, I'm getting, actually, we got two kings coming out, the king of Ehecatil, which is the king of wind, the king of swords, and the king of Teltil, which is the king of fire. And so with also the two of fire, Teltil, which is the two of wands. And what I see about these two things is that it's still working with this etheric nature. And that's why we're seeing a lot of swords coming out too, because again, this is all stemming to our mind. This is all about our consciousness. This is about what we are doing every day to make sure that we are aligned with ourselves, with our authentic selves, with our bliss that is, you know, more than what the what capitalist wants us to be, you know, being enslaved into this the system. And we're meant to be free and to be inspired by life. And so right now, I think we're being met. The two of wands in the traditional tarot is like the man looking at the crystal ball. And I think that we're that. That's what we're doing, guys, right now. We are looking at the crystal ball. We are looking at it. We're seeing what is it that we want to birth? What are we going to be a part of in this new life? That is the prophecy. It is to think, to open up our minds and to come into, yes, and to come into the idea of what we want with this new era, this new world, and to come into community. I think, you know, Raven, I just want to thank you for creating this. You know, I asked you to for an interview, and now we're doing this series. So everything is, you know, all in divine order. But I think that this is all because we're meant to inspire ourselves, right? We're meant to inspire ourselves to be more authentic and to share, you know, what we have found with the clarity of mind based on, you know, just past lives, our gurus. And gosh, my throat chakra is going a little bit. So go ahead and say whatever.
You know, it's a mutable time. We're going through a change, speaking of swords. So we got to make sure, you know, we take care of our bodies, a lot of water, and nourish ourselves, because it's gonna. I'm about to drink some tea too. Like, but you know, segue, like achievement, Ridian City. So you know, we can have all of these things, and I wanted to thank you so much as well. Just I didn't even know it would become this, but you and I have been friends for a couple years now, and it's been one of the funnest explorations of knowledge that I've experienced.
I really can say the same thing as well. I think that just like you said in the beginning, we're not being taught this in public school, especially in the American school system. And we are seeing slowly a trend of, you know, ethnic studies happening. Like in California, there was the first, you know, where they're going to look at like Chicanos, Mesoamericans, and African history. But this is barely happening, guys. This is barely what we're doing. That's why we're here to usher in. We're here to usher in and bring in this new consciousness that we can all live right now at this moment, you know, being in our purpose and not allowing the constraints of society to keep us down. And this is, to me, what prophecy means. It is to speak with our words, to manifest and to create the world that we want to see, the change we want to see, just by being ourselves. So thank you guys so much for joining in.
Thank you so much.
If there's anything else you want to say, Raven?
Yeah, and then once again, to me, prophecy is using your imagination and manifesting your will. So that says a lot about what goes on in your imagination. And I think that's one of the gifts that we can aspire to behold, is using our imagination properly and manifesting the best realm from that world of the devas of imagination. And it's true. We can all do it.
The Lord of creativity. I always love to say, you know, when you're doing art, you're channeling the Lord of creativity. And that is what creates this this openness to receive this knowledge through many different sources: music, you know, art, painting, writing. There's so many sources.
A mistake.
Huh?
Mistakes.
Oh, learning
Issues. Like these things. And this is what the simultaneousness of yoga will teach you.
Yes.
In practice.
Yoga and just honoring the land and remembering the land that we're on. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And again, like Raven said, we're going to take a little break. We'll come back in the summer just with more
Fire.
Yeah, more fire. More
heat for the summer. Yeah.
And just before I go, did anyone have a question? Just give it 1 minute. Any question? I know last time I didn't give enough room for that. You know, we were. I forgot to talk about logic and reason, but you know, I think it all comes down to observing and understanding. You know, just the internal and external worlds that we're living in.
Yeah, I think logic and reason, it goes both ways with emotions and intelligence. And so that means that we have a lot of reprogramming to do when it comes to our terminologies and where these things come from, and just making it more accessible to people to where they have the space to create their own definitions.
Yes, become your own authority, become your own master, and follow the masters and follow the roads. They you know, so much knowledge is out there, and we're here to just explore it. So thank you guys so much. Yes, we're just, you know, we're going forward with this. So thanks.
We're moving forward. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow La Casa de Luz if you're not, and Dara Didi, and follow me at Raven Alexandria and Sublimatorium, links below.
Yes. Peace out, guys. Thank you. Peace.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Guru.
Vivo. Jai Ma.
Welcome to Prophecy 3. Today we're discussing the Mayan calendar, culture, and the 2012 phenomenon, and how this is affecting us to this day. So please grab your pens and notebooks and get ready to jump into this beautiful discussion with Raven Alexandria. So Raven, we're so excited for this time. Hola. All right, Raven, are you there? Hi.
Hi.
So
happy spring. Namaste. Hare Krishna. Jai Ma.
Feliz Primavera. Yes. Happy Ostara and all the good, beautiful things changing in this world. So, you know, today, you know, we're going to be talking about the Mayan culture, calendar, and the 2012 phenomenon, and how it's all affecting us. But first, I wanted to ask you to do a mantra and everything. And also, what does prophecy mean? Because we've been doing this, you know, for the last, this is our third one. And so what does it mean? And yes, so take it away.
Great. I would love to lead us in a Ganesh mantra. I'm just going to give a pranams to my guru right quick. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva, Guru Ishvara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Shri Guru Vedama, Guru Shaya, Gam Ganapataye Namaha Gam Ganapataye Namaha Gam Ganapataye Namaha.
Yay! So, what does prophecy mean? Why are we doing this?
So yes, if you saw the video that we put out promoting this, we talked about prophecy being a discipline of oracles. And so what does this mean for our current? A lot, because you can